When the year 2020 came to an end, the world had high expectations for 2021.
How's everybody doing today?
2020 was a year lost to COVID-19, with many people spending the majority of the year in tedious lockdowns and in fear. So 2021 had to be better, right? The worst seemed to be behind us. Vaccines were about to be delivered, economies were predicted to quickly recover, and a new year was on the horizon. But what happened instead was another lurching, stammering year. The pandemic has now claimed more than 5 million lives worldwide and destroyed tens of millions more through illness, financial hardship, and grief. Just when one COVID-19 strain seemed to be under control, a new variant emerged in 2021. And we were suddenly all memorizing Greek letters, from Alpha to Omicron. "2021 saw a huge divide form between the vaccinated and unvaccinated. While poorer parts of the world are still waiting for access to vaccines, only 7.6% of people in low-income countries have received at least one jab. Richer nations have been confronted by a vocal minority that refuses to take them. Governments had to take action. Some didn't give people a choice and introduced mandates, while others tried encouraging citizens by restricting where the unvaccinated could go, barring them from restaurants or even their workplaces. Tougher restrictions triggered massive protests. And while anti-vaxxers hit the streets in anger, the patience of those who have already had their booster shots is starting to disappear, as mental health struggles and substance abuse continue to rise amid ongoing lockdowns. In 2021 also saw a number of geopolitical conflicts across the world. Myanmar's military ousted the government in a coup that sparked huge protests nationwide and resulted in a bloody crackdown. In South Africa, following the imprisonment of ex-President Jacob Zuma for contempt of court, there was an outbreak of unrest and looting. The year-long conflict between rebels and government forces in the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia intensified. Lebanon was faced with one of the worst economic crises since the mid-19th century. Shortages in fuel, medication, and multiple power cuts prompted widespread anger. Tensions between the US and China remained unresolved this year, while Russia's intentions towards Ukraine raised concerns. Unrest caused concerns within the US as well. Images of the US Capitol being stormed and attacked by supporters of Donald Trump shocked the world. The assassination of Haiti's president and a subsequent earthquake caused thousands of Haitians to flee their country. And it wasn't just Haitians on the run. A surge in migrants crossing the English Channel from France triggered a diplomatic row between Paris and London.
Of course, we have to work.
When the internationally backed Afghan government collapsed and the Taliban took control, many Afghans fled what Amnesty International later called repeated war crimes and relentless bloodshed. Meanwhile, Belarus encouraged migrants to cross its territory to enter Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. Critics called it a bid to pressure the EU to end sanctions it imposed after the rigged 2020 Belarusian presidential election. All in all, the European Union saw a 70% increase in the number of people entering the bloc illegally in 2021 compared to the previous year. Some 84 million people around the world have been forcibly displaced from their homes. Conflict, economic collapse, and climate change are likely to drive that number higher in the coming years. (2021) was perceived as a make-or-break year for climate action. The climate emergency became more palpable as fires, droughts, tornadoes, and flooding scarred more of the planet. At the beginning of the year, Australia was overwhelmed by floods, which was later mirrored in Germany, where flash flooding killed more than 200 people and cost billions of euros in damage. Meanwhile, heat records were topped across the world. In Canada, the heat killed more than 230 people, while 36 tornadoes caused havoc across the US. What's more, extreme wildfires were ablaze around the Mediterranean, in California, Siberia, and the Amazon forest. The IPCC published an extensive report based on more than 14,000 studies, warning that climate change is more advanced than previously assumed and is definitely caused by humans. But there was also some positive news about the climate in 2021. China promised not to build any new coal power stations abroad. And the climate conference in Scotland agreed on funding for poorer nations to green the economies and adapt to the effects of global warming. 2021 also saw 2 unprecedented court cases in Europe that could have a long-lasting impact. Germany's Federal Constitutional Court ruled that the freedoms and fundamental rights of young people have been violated by insufficient climate protection from the state. And in the Netherlands, a court ordered gas company Shell to reduce its worldwide CO2 emissions by 45% by 2030, compared to 2019 levels. Experts believe this will result in a chain reaction and trigger companies and countries to take action before they are dragged before court. So in 2021, we were faced with one crisis after the next. We had to grapple with the reality of the impact of COVID-19, climate change, and conflicts across the world. But we also learned that we are more resilient than we might think, that humanity can rise above, and that together we can be better.